The long wait is over. The United States men's national team back in action for the first time since the Copa America, and it might be worse than we initially thought. The situation here as the World Cup is creeping closer and closer on the horizon. The United States losing to Canada 2-1 at Children's Mercy Park in Kansas City, Kansas. Losing to Canada on home soil for the first time in almost 60 years. Yeah, that stinks. That's not good. And I don't like, losing to Canada. And I don't like losing to Jesse Marsch. But we will break all of this down here. Again, it is a friendly in September in a team in transition. So we have to choose our words wisely here and not be prisoner of the moment and put too much criticism on a game that doesn't mean anything other than losing to Canada and ending that streak. But what it does mean is Mauricio Pochettino, when and if he takes over, and I'm not going to talk about Mauricio Pochettino too much. We'll have a video when he's appointed and give you the details on what we expect him to look for in the early stages of his tenure. But he is going to see some players that are complacent, that don't have that intensity, and he's going to cross them off the list even after seeing this game. Because we are on the clock for this World Cup. And it is going to be here before we know it. And we have a new manager who is going to be soaking all this information in. And he is going to go with his gut because that is why we're hiring him in the first place. But we'll move on from Mauricio Pochettino. Today here on the Soccer OG. Check out the Soccer OG podcast where all podcasts are available. Have a new one there with Brian Sciaretta. We talk about this window of friendlies, and we talk about Mauricio Pochettino is going to be looking for in the players who will benefit and who may slip down the pecking order and who might get off the roster based on what his eyes are telling him. You know what that means. Like and subscribe. Smash that like button so we can continue to produce great videos. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate to have conversations with you about all things soccer. So, yes, losing to Canada. That is, Jesse Marsch criticized a fair bit, including by myself, on the broadcast on TNT. Kyle Martino called him out, and I thought it was, I loved Kyle Martino doing that, saying that essentially that Jesse's been petty and just extensive with this, and what he's got to do is get out of it, turn down podcasts and podcast invitations to talk about the U.S. men's national team. The thing with Jesse is that he says, I don't care about the U.S. team. I'm with Canada. But then he keeps talking about the U.S. team. You do care. It's for his best interest that he stops talking about the U.S. and focus on Canada. So it's a bad scene. But he is vindicated because Canada is winning. And talking about Canada, we know about that core group of players with Jonathan David and Alfonso Davies and Eustachio and Kyle Larin. But they are getting more and more players that they can rely on. Jacob Schaffelberg is scoring goals all the time. He is really good. He's going to be with a European team. Moise Bombito was the best player on the field, and to me, is looking like the best defender in CONCACAF. He shut down that U.S. team in the first half. He was superb. And he is a load, and he's getting better. Hard to imagine this is a guy that was on no one's map and has been playing with the Rapids before a move to Ligue 1. So Moise Bombito, another shining light for Canadian soccer, who deserved this. Paul Carr of TNT posted a stat where it said 11 shots to 1, and that wasn't on target for the U.S. in the first 45 minutes. And I think they had 2 entries into the attacking third, which is crazy. Absolutely crazy that is what the U.S. are producing. They looked flat, and this is a problem. Mikey Varis, who is, the interim coach, he's in a very difficult situation. He's just trying to put it together, but he's a guy who knows young players. At the half, he says, no one's playing brave. I thought that was an interesting choice of word. The U.S. are usually brave. They will usually jump on a grenade, do what's required. This team doesn't do that. And by the way, people were still blaming Greg Berhalter for this. And I get it because there's a transition. But at some point, we got to call it what it is and blame it on the players. People blaming this on Greg Berhalter, it's like that scene from the movie Spinal Tap where they say they were on stage and they're getting booed by the fans. And they blame it on the opening act. No. So we have issues with these players. And there are some big problems. suggesting that we aren't as good, or we've never been as good as what people are thinking. This was the starting 11 for the United States national team. Everything was kind of as you would expect, with one exception. There were about 8 guys that would normally be on a U.S. roster, 3 or 4 guys that would normally start, and then the replacements that you would expect were in place for them. You had Christopher Lund come in for Anthony Robinson. You had Brendan Aronson come in for Tim Weah. You had Johnny Cardoso come in for Tyler Adams. You had Gio Reyna replaced by Malik Tillman. Otherwise, it's pretty much the squad. Weston McKennie's also not there. He's one of those 4 midfielders that would normally play, but not in the mix for this game. The only big surprise was Patrick Schulte being the number 1 choice, suggesting to me that the Matt Turner era is probably ending for the U.S. He's moved to a new club where he's not going to play. I don't think Mauricio Pochettino wants a goalkeeper who's not playing at all or hasn't played for 2 years. So Patrick Schulte, to me, who seized his opportunity, he played really well. Not really well, he played well. So Patrick Schulte. The other guy is Zach Steffen, who I understand why he wasn't called into this roster, but I think he should have been. I think it's going to be Schulte and Steffen. And both of those guys I feel okay with. Again, it's not a position of strength, but it's something that we can live with. And the ceiling's pretty high for Schulte, and I think Zach Steffen has some very good qualities as well. Central defense. I've seen enough of the Richards-Ream partnership. It hasn't really gone well, those guys as a duo. Chris Richards isn't going anywhere, although I would say that he shouldn't be starter in ink. Tim Ream, on the other hand, I'm a little surprised why he didn't step away from international football, or even more surprised why the national team called him into this and started him. He's not making the 2026 World Cup, so you've got to pivot away from him now. And I think that should be his last game with the national team. I adore Tim Ream. I thank him for what he did for us in 2022, but it's time. Father Time is still undefeated, as they say. And it's probably going to be Chris Richards, but I wouldn't put him in there either. Cameron Carter-Vickers was injured, unavailable. I'd love to see what Mark McKenzie can do. Austin Trusty, to a lesser degree, I don't think he's quite there. Miles Robinson would have probably been called into this roster, except for the fact that he was called into the the Copa America and the Olympics, so they're not going to bring him up 3 times because the club would lose it. He is an option too. That is up for grabs. The fullbacks weren't great. Joe Scally had a bad game, but I'm okay with Joe Scally. Christopher Lund was poor in the first half, but played really well in the second, so I'm excited about him. He has the physical tools. He is fast, big, strong. I'm okay with him being the backup for Anthony Robinson. Something we got to get out of as a habit, and that is because a player starts for a big European club, we automatically put him into our national team. It doesn't work for Chris Richards, and it certainly hasn't worked for Johnny Cardoso. Johnny Cardoso isn't the typical American profile for a variety of reasons. He's technically good, decent passer of the ball. I don't understand the rage about him because he has continued to underperform on the national team. He is not physical. He is not athletic. And that kind of shows. We see that from Tyler Adams. We saw that from Aiden Marsch. He doesn't have that grit. I'm not saying it's over for Johnny Cardoso, but we don't put him in here just because he's starting for Real Betis. He's been marginal at best. So let's get away from that. Because guess who's going to get away from that? Mauricio Pochettino. He is going to see the guys that have the eye of the tiger and getting after it. And if that is Johnny Cardoso, I haven't seen that yet from him. So again, the second half was much better, but this is a habit that, these 2 games that we have, the U.S., mostly under Berhalter, always were poor in that first game, and certainly poor in the first half. Remember the game against Colombia? They got better against Brazil. Who was it? Uzbekistan. They got better against Oman. Can't keep happening. This is a bad, bad habit, and you've got to get away from it. You've got to be ready from the first kick. Okay, it's good that they got intense and they fired themselves up, as they were saying in the broadcast, with some F-bombs. It can't keep starting that way. So I don't want to bury this team because it was a friendly. Again, it stinks to lose to Canada because we should be upset the same way when we lose to Mexico. But there were some decent moments there that I liked. Flo Balogun, who is a guy we got to keep an eye on because he's like a $40 million player. He's not performing at Monaco, and at some point they're going to get someone who will. I think his playing time at the club is in peril, and if that happens, so will be for the national team. But I think Flo is on the up and up. Thought he flexed his muscles here a couple times, played well. And that, based on what he did at the Copa America, where he scored a couple goals, Flo's good. Christian Pulisic, not his best game, but he's so much class. He was involved in the goal. Christian Pulisic is really, he looks so good because no one can do what he does. Malik Tillman was okay, I thought. I'm all right with that moving forward. And the guys off the bench all knew what was what. And they came off the bench and they provided a spark. Brendan Aronson, who wasn't great. Haji Wright, who made some mistakes in transition, still looked like he has something there that we can rely on. Again, Lund was better in the second half. Luca De La Torre came in and scored his first goal for the national team. It was good to see him because he hasn't been playing for his club. He is just a wonderful figure, always in good spirits, smiling. I like Luca a lot. Aiden Morris coming in for Cardoso, involved in the goal, looked steely and solid. I will take him as well. The one bench, Cade Cowell, was explosive. I don't know why he was wearing long sleeves because, I mean, I'm here in a heat wave in California and roasting. I know it was cooler in Kansas City, but he was all wrapped up. It was a little bit odd, but he looked good. And he was there because Gio Reyna, who is in peril, I think, as well. We keep saying Gio Reyna, he's a young player, but very soon you get old in this game. And I don't know. I'm very worried about him. We can't keep making excuses for him. I think he's on the outside looking in as good as he has been. Again, Pochettino's got a small window. The one bench player who didn't provide much for me was Ricardo Pepi. He had a chance that he foiled. And then he passed it out, I think, to Haji Wright, who was in an offside position. You've got to be attuned. And when you're looking at the guys who can play up the top, Ricardo Pepi keeps dropping down the pecking order. So, I don't know. But, look, enough to keep you optimistic, and we'll move forward to see if this U.S. team can build off of this. And I guarantee you they'll play better against New Zealand. And in that game in Cincinnati, I hope to see Mauricio Pochettino in the stands with a notebook taking notes about this U.S. team. We are on the clock. We got to get it going. I assume, again, I can't believe how many people getting this story wrong. If you don't have a report, don't report it, okay? Don't report it. You know, Fabrizio Romano, if you don't have connections with the U.S. team, don't report it. You know, this erroneous stuff, it's like we've been waiting and waiting and people think they have a story and they don't. Don't report it unless you know. So hopefully, I mean, this thing where they kick it down a day or two and everyone says it's going to happen, stop. Hopefully it happens. Why it's going to happen this weekend. Hopefully it happens Monday. Check out the Soccer OG podcast where all podcasts are available. Like and subscribe us here. We'll be back after the New Zealand game and we'll have a video when and if Mauricio Pochettino is announced.